Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome everyone to episode 40 of Instigate Success. I am Jake Schoen. I'll be your host again tonight for this week's podcast. Different location for me this time. I am in Mobile, Alabama. I just got here not too long ago. Just checked into the hotel. So that is the change of scenery behind me. I am here for the championship weekend for the ABA. Many of you probably know, we've been talking about this for a while. This weekend is the ABA championship. So tonight they're playing the semifinals. I think they finished up the one game already, and they're currently playing the second game right now. And then tomorrow there is a full schedule of events. I think it had everything from live entertainment to a celebrity all-star game, as well as our all-star game and the championship game to wrap everything up tomorrow night. So lots going on here. I am going to be in attendance tomorrow. Not there for the games today, but I will be there for the stuff going on tomorrow. And we'll throw the graphic up here. So we also have one of our players. He is going to be there for the All-Star game. Our big man, AB, the 7-footer himself, he made the All-Star game, so he will be at the All-Star game tomorrow. So we'll have both a player and an owner representing the Instigators here in Mobile, Alabama for the ABA championship weekend. But lots of fun. I'm sure we'll have here, and definitely going to help get us recognized within the whole entire ABA with over 150 teams. To have a player on the all-star roster, that is pretty impressive in our first year, and we're definitely thankful to have a player on the all-star roster. But AB definitely deserved that. He led the league in blocks, and anybody that caught any of the games throughout the season and the postseason, he definitely was a force to be reckoned with every week, averaging just about a triple-double, and he had a few of those throughout the season. And it'll be fun for sure tomorrow. We'll have to see. I haven't been to the venue yet, but I'll try to get some pictures and stuff from the venue so we can get some post up for that as well. But I do know they're doing a live stream for the championship weekend. I do think the ABA is hosting that through their website. I think it's a little complicated, honestly, to find some of the stuff on their website, but I think there is a way to stream it through their website. I think they made a post about that somewhere on social, but I did check it out when they posted that. I think it's like $5 or so to catch that stream live if you're not able to make it out in person. So there is still a way to watch it. I believe, again, that's through the ABA website. I think it's like the same website that they use to sell tickets. But they did, so they did wrap up the first game already. That first matchup was between the first two teams you see on the screen there, the Silicon Valley Panthers and the Chicago Fury. Silicon Valley, obviously, from the Western region, and Chicago from the Central region, the region which we are a part of. So the Panthers definitely had quite a bit of travel to make it out here to Alabama, and the Fury representing our region. So definitely the team, I think, as far as the ownership group here, was rooting for going into the game. And they did just post the final for that game not too long ago. And the Fury were able to take down the Panthers in a very tight game. I didn't have a chance to catch it, so I'm just going based off of this post. But it says the final score is 91-90, and the Fury actually won that game off of a buzzer beater. by Devontae Jones. So that sounds like it was a pretty great game to kick things off here for the ABA championship this weekend. Uh, it would have been awesome to catch that, but I was driving, so I didn't have a chance to tune in for that. But definitely sets things up for tomorrow for an interesting matchup, because I think we've got our team to root for in the championship. I think that is going to be the Fury. So if they can wind up winning, that would keep at least part of the championship in the Central region. Reminder: the Lions were co-champions last year, so every time we got to play them, it was also a little added thing to throw in there that we were playing the champions from the past season. I don't know. I mean, we didn't match up against the Fury this past year, and I'm not quite sure if that's a team we would wind up playing against this upcoming season either. But still, to have the bragging rights of championship in the region would be very nice to hold on to. The other game going on right now is the Mississippi Silverbacks versus Binghamton Bulldogs. Um, Again, I know Frosty and I kind of broke down some of these games, or some of the teams as well, last week, and honestly, we haven't super followed the whole entire ABA. We stuck more so to our region, but I mentioned the Binghamton Bulldogs are a team I am kind of familiar with. They are pretty impressive. They knocked off some pretty great teams as well in their run. And the Silverbacks were the first team to lock themselves into the championship weekend. So definitely going to be an interesting matchup here. Currently going on, and that tipped off at 8 o'clock. And the other thing I realized when I got here in Alabama, time zone is different. So I'm in Central Time. So when I keep looking at the clocks, they have different times compared to what I have on, say, like my phone compared to my computer. My computer's still set up for East. So that way I didn't miss the stream. So it actually worked out well for that. But that was 8 Eastern. So that was a 2 hour an hour ago. Yeah, so an hour ago that game tipped off. And that'll be a fun matchup. Definitely two great teams there. I think if I had to wager on one, I mean, you see there with the record, I think the Bulldogs would have to be the favorite going into the matchup. But it is single elimination, so it is definitely anybody's ball game here. And whichever team does advance will have the chance to face off against the Chicago Fury tomorrow. And I do believe, I don't see the graphic anymore that had the times for this stuff for tomorrow, but I think last I saw was 7 p.m. was going to be the championship game. I could be wrong on that, but I think that was the last I saw. And I think things kick off tomorrow at noon. I'd have to double check which time zone that is, but I believe things will kick off at noon with either some sort of entertainment or a celebrity game, and then they will have some skill challenges, and then they will go into some of the other events. Eventually, it'll be the All-Star game and then the championship after the All-Star game. I do believe that is the schedule. But they do have like a bunch of things here listed on their ticket site to buy tickets. It has everything. It says live entertainment, semifinal games, which obviously are currently ongoing, mini fashion show, celebrity all-star game, middle and elementary school cheer showcase, college and high school three-point and slam dunk contest, as well as an ABA three-point and slam dunk contest, and then the all-star draft and the all-star game championship. So again, I'll have to double check and see if they have like a breakdown of the official times for all that. But I think what I saw was things kick off tomorrow at noon, and it will have the championship game around 7 p.m. tomorrow. So definitely lots going on here for the ABA. Going to be a really fun weekend here in Alabama. And this will be the last action for the ABA for quite a bit. And we'll be going into like full off season mode after this. Um, but we'll have plenty of votes and stuff going into the off season. I think, yeah, if you didn't catch it already, we made a post not too long ago on Patreon. This was a screenshot from last week, so that's why it still says 2 days ago. But we did post our first poll here for the fan voters. So if you're not a fan voter, you can become a fan voter on the Patreon. And you just go to our Patreon. Let's see, we'll have that scroll at the bottom. And it's $10 or $10 a month to become a fan voter. Fan voter access will get you into these votes in the off season. So there's going to be a handful of votes here. This is the first one. It's a player evaluation form. So you'll have access here to input your opinions on the players from this past season. We did limit it to the players that were on the roster for the final regular season game. And there's like a ranking system. So there's 5 options to choose from as far as the system, rather than just saying like, yes or no or good or bad. We tried to have a little bit more of a playing field to go with, so that way we can kind of see how the roster shapes, and try to get some key players back for next season, and then continue to build around that. I know we said this last week, but as much as we love the team from this year, they're just it never happens in professional sports that the whole entire team winds up coming back year after year. So there will wind up being some changes with personnel, I'm sure, as we go throughout the off season. And just a fair note, even if we all vote that we definitely want to keep a player, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to be able to keep set whatever player that winds up being. There's a lot of things that go into signing players, and sometimes players have negotiations with other teams, other leagues, and so on. So this doesn't necessarily guarantee it, but we are definitely going to take all the votes here and compile them together to see which direction that we want to go based off of these fan votes, and try to build the roster based off of that. Um, but yeah, we'll head into negotiations, I think, next month, based off of these results. And that is why the votes, they wrap up at the end of this month. So we have to get these votes in by May 1st. So if you haven't had a chance yet, become a fan voter on the Patreon. And you see that scrolling at the bottom. That is the website to go to become a fan voter. If you're watching this live, you probably already are part of our Patreon subscription. So thank you everyone who is here, who tunes in all the time to watch all of our live streams for our podcast every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Currently, this and throughout the season for all of our live game streams. And we did also announce another thing coming up. We'll talk on that a little bit later, but we'll have that streaming on our Patreon as well. But this is a great chance. So if you caught the games, to have your vote said, this is the first of many off-season votes that we're going to have. But really, we're making sure that the fans will be able to shape the roster for the Instigators when season 2 comes around, later this year, I guess. But we got plenty of votes going on. We're still getting some things negotiated. We'll see exactly whenever we have announcements, we'll definitely be able to share them. But lots of things going on that we will be having some votes coming up for. But we also have in that fan vote for the player evaluations, the second part of that is kind of a feeler out there to see what we want to see in the next coach. So we had Frosty on last week, and he made the official announcement he will not be returning as the head coach for next year. That was something we talked about behind the scenes, and we kind of knew that was going to happen. He never, honestly, we never expected him to be the head coach in the first place. But he stepped in and did an amazing job for the Instigators in our inaugural season. He finished out the season with basically all the records for coaching. So whoever winds up being the next coach will have to break all of his records. So he does have the most wins as an Instigators coach, playoff win as well, and points per game, points allowed, all that type of stuff. So any kind of statistics when it comes to coaching, Frosty does have the record currently in all those categories. But we have some votes up there as well to see what type of coach we're looking for. If we want like a coach to push things, be up tempo, kind of set up plays, a mix of both. We got options. And we're definitely listening to the fans here. We definitely think that that's going to be a key part for the team next year as well. Once we can get the coach and some of the core players back, I think we're going to have a lot more time this time around to get things set up and definitely kind of gel a little bit better going into the season. It was our first season, so we kind of learned things on the fly, but now we have an idea of how to do things a little bit better. And I think we'll have some tryouts coming up, hopefully soon, but definitely throughout the off season, we plan on having a few tryouts. And let me double check. Yeah. But yeah, we should have some announcements as far as when that would be once we get things set up for the tryouts. Again, we did post something as well. I don't have the post here on the screen, but we did wind up posting not too long ago. If you have anybody that would be interested in trying out or becoming a player for the Instigators, we do have it set up on the website, our official website, the www.apexofsports.com. Right on that website, there are a few tabs. You can go on there to learn about the Instigators, the roster from last season, statistics from last season, and then underneath that, there is a prospective players link to click on. If you click on that, anybody that is interested in becoming a player or trying out for the Instigators, they can fill out a form there. And we will be in touch with them as far as when our tryouts are going to be. So we already had quite a handful of people submit that. And just looking at that, those numbers, looking like we should have a better playing field to select from this upcoming season. I think the number Frosty threw out there last week was 12 people we had submit a form within the 2 or 3 days of putting that up. And if you remember last season going into the first tryout, I believe we only had about 9 players show up. So definitely an improvement in that end. And we also added players throughout the season. So just because, we set the roster going into the first week, just like every other sport, the roster is evolving and it's a fluid situation. So I'm sure we'll probably have some kind of situation like that again this upcoming season, where we add players throughout the season. But some of our great players this season were late additions. Lawan Swish Whitney, he joined the team after he led the Shuckers in the exhibition game against the Instigators. He joined, I think, in week 2 or 3. And wound up being an integral part of the team, setting the record for three-point shooting for the Instigators in the inaugural season. We also had Aubrey Patterson join a couple games into the season as well, I believe. And then a late addition throughout the season, just about at the end of the season, was Mike Pugh. And he did a great job in those playoff games. So definitely, a thing to keep in mind too, just because the roster does get set, we still always have some more room for prospective players. So if you know anybody that would be interested in that, or you are interested yourself, feel free to go on the website. Again, that's www.apexofsports.com. And you can click on the Instigators tab up top, and then at the bottom of that, I have a drop down for prospective players. But yeah, so that is another part of that. So a lot of things going on with just that one post, but be sure to get your votes heard before the end of the month so we can discuss what we are looking to do for next season, both on the player side and on the coaching side. And we'll definitely have our hands full when it comes to that, as well as some other stuff with the team going into next season. But I think that if we can knock out the coaching part and we get a couple of core players back that we had this past season, I think we can kind of try to build like a identity for the team to hold this season. Or going into this season, the team I think really kind of gelled towards the end of the year. That second playoff game or play-in game against the Phoenix, things just didn't go quite our way. That happens sometimes. But the turnaround from 2023 to 2024 was very impressive. And we're definitely very proud of everybody that was part of the team and everybody. We thank everybody that had supported us in that inaugural season. But again, uh, we plan on doing this for basically eternity, I guess. The Instigators, we finished our first season, but there is going to be plenty more seasons to come. And reminder, I guess, is the AAC was founded actually with the intention of expanding into just about every sports field, which we'll jump into that now. So we made the announcement. We had Frosty on here last time on Instigate Success. So we're going to host a new show coming up soon on Monday nights called Amateur Night. So this will kind of get us a little bit of a feeler to see what our fans like as far as sports, and what the AAC could look to possibly go into in the future. But Amateur Night is going to be fan submitted clips from games. So, like if you have a recreational league you're a part of, if you're in high school, you have a high school game, basically any kind of sporting event that is not professional. We are asking you to submit that. We'll have more details as far as that goes, how to submit, where to submit, and all that kind of stuff. Any kind of um, I guess restrictions as far as what we would take and for the video, but that will be coming up pretty soon, and that will be Monday nights. I know Frosty he said that he's got his baseball league, the Penguins, the team that he is a part of as a manager as well as a player. And that will kind of kick things off. That'll be our first, I believe, our first stream once we get that going live. Will be with the Penguins baseball game, and we'll have him as well as some of our other guys here that can jump in on Monday nights to kind of commentate, recap those games. It also gives us some practice going into the off season, so kind of fine tune our skills with the commentating and announcing side of things. This year, we kind of jumped into that, and really none of us had experience, so that was a learning experience for all of us. But this will give us a little bit more time to practice that, as well as kind of practice it for some other sports as well, because we had basketball. We'll definitely have a lot more basketball to call, but I guess we'll have baseball, and if we can get some other sports on here, it'll give us an idea of how we could call those games, where to improve as well, and also helps give fans some exposure. If they play themselves, it helps. That's another thing we can talk about in the Discord, or any of these chats we have here with fans. But I think that'll be a pretty fun thing going on in our off season. But again, we are welcoming fans to submit video clips, full games, whatever you have for amateur night that is going to be coming up soon. If you have anything that you want to get onto amateur night, you can reach out to us. But we'll be putting up something pretty soon, I think, as far as an announcement as with how to submit that and any kind of requirements, restrictions, whatnot, going into the videos. I think the only thing we all agreed on is it just has to be like, basically anything that's legal because like no street racing basically is all it comes down to. So I know some people may consider that a sport, but street racing is not technically legal. So it will exclude that. But if there's like an organized motorsport, like autocross or drifting or something like that, definitely feel free to submit those clips. But like I said, if you got kids games you want to submit, go ahead, submit kids games, high school, middle school, anything. Again, recreational leagues, adult recreational leagues, any sport we are welcoming. Definitely doesn't have to be a mainstream sport. It can be a modified sport, inventive sport, something that people aren't very familiar with. But I definitely think this is going to be a fun experience. It kind of will help build the fan base, I think, as well. We'll have a little bit more to talk about during the off season as well, when we don't have as many votes going on, and there's some lulls and as far as like team updates and stuff when we go to off season mode. Um, but yeah, I see. Let me see. I see Jason right here in the chat. Esports, I think we would be fine with that. Can double check with Frosty on that, but I think we would definitely welcome that. Um, I I'm speaking for him, but I'm pretty sure he'd be fine with that. Definitely any kind of content we can get going to build amateur night, get some views here, and kind of build the fan base. I think we would definitely welcome esports. I know that's even like a route we with the Apex instigators. We had that with to kick things off here before we had the Hoosier State instigators. So I definitely think we would welcome esports. But yeah, so any kind of uh, any kind of footage, videos going into amateur night, we'll put out an announcement as far as how to submit those videos, and that'll be kicking off sometime shortly in this off season. But that'll be Monday nights. We'll have an official time and stuff announcement coming out for that. But we wanted to get that little teaser here for everybody here on the Patreon. And I think that is all the AAC news I had for this week. I'll also bring up, because it's basketball related, NBA playoffs are just getting started now. I don't have a graphic for that or anything. I kind of jumped into the hotel here, got things set up so I could get the stream going, but I don't have an NBA graphic as far as that. But they had the play-in games going on this week, similar to what the ABA has with the play-in tournament. So the play-in tournament over on the Western Conference, two of the traditional powerhouses in recent years were part of that, the Lakers and the Warriors, in separate games. The Lakers took on the Pelicans. That was that Tuesday night. And that was a very fun game to watch. Obviously, once it kicks into playoffs, LeBron always seems to step up a little bit. And it was a great matchup between him and Zion Williamson. And unfortunately, Zion got injured, and that didn't go the Pelicans' way. The Lakers did wind up advancing, and they will be moving on into the actual playoffs. And the other game was the Warriors and the Kings, and things just really did not go well for the Warriors in that game. Unfortunately, that team was a dynasty for quite some time with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. it's happened a few times throughout the season. Clay just hasn't been able to quite keep up with the performance he has had in the past, and that playoff game was really not good for him. I think he finished that game with no points. So be interesting. I know he is going into free agency as well this offseason, so that'll be a something to watch. And going into the NBA offseason, as far as the Warriors, what happens with their dynasty, but the Kings were able to defeat them pretty handedly. And that sets up the matchup between the Pelicans and the Kings, which I believe is either on now or going to be on very soon. Um, on the Eastern side, we had the matchup on Wednesday between the Heat and the Sixers. And the Sixers won that game narrowly, but that was a very close game. The Heat came back towards the end, but the Heat had a pretty large lead going into the halftime, and they kind of blew that lead. And the Sixers came back. That was in Philly, so that might have had a little bit to do with the momentum there. But the Sixers, led by Joel Embiid, were able to take down the Heat in a close 1-point game. But those are definitely two teams that you would think would be almost like locked into the playoffs. But the Eastern side is always a little weird when it comes to the standings in the playoffs. But because the West always, traditionally at least, is better record wise. The East, there's a lot of teams that are very close in record. And the Knicks were kind of a surprise team. I'll be honest. They wound up with the 2 seed this year, just to put things into perspective in the Eastern Conference. But they were the 2 seed, and I think they were like um, 14, 15 games behind the Celtics for first. So definitely a huge difference between the 1 and the 2 seed on the East. But yeah, 1-point game for that between the Heat and the Sixers. That locked the Sixers into the playoffs, and they will match up against the 2 seed, which is the Knicks. On the West, I forgot to say the Lakers moved on, and they will play the Nuggets. So that is actually a pretty tough matchup there. And then I think the winner of tonight's Western Conference game will play the Thunder, who were the number 1 seed in the West. But yeah, so they just had a game going on here. The Heat, as you said there, the Heat just beat the Chicago Bulls to get the 8th seed. And yes, my doppelganger Jaime Jaquez, he had a pretty nice game this weekend. Well, actually tonight he had a pretty nice game. I think I caught the fourth quarter, or at least over in the corner, I caught some of the fourth quarter. And he had 21 points, 6 assists, 7 rebounds. Tyler Harrow also had a pretty good game, 24 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 assists, so just short of a triple double. But that is without Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler did get injured in that first play-in game for the Heat. A couple of injuries again. Once it hits the postseason, it always seems to happen. But again, Pelicans with Zion's injury, that'll be something to monitor. He is not playing tonight, and they have their play-in game, which I think is going on currently. So I think he's going to be out for a little bit of time. So even if they extend their playoff run into the next week, I'm not quite sure if he'll be able to make it for that. Same with Butler. I think even with the Heat advancing, I'm not quite sure Butler will wind up playing in the series. But that does set up an interesting matchup between the Celtics and the Heat this year in the playoffs. Last year, the Heat made it to the finals, even though they played in this play-in tournament as well last year. And actually, very similar circumstances. They were, I think, the same seed number. They lost their first play-in game, and then they won their second play-in game. And I know they wound up facing the Celtics at some point in last year's playoffs, and they were able to defeat the Celtics in last year's playoffs. I do think, if I remember correctly, though, Jason Tatum may have been injured at some point in that playoff series, though. Um, but it definitely goes to show that the play-in tournament can have a team capable of being in the finals, and that goes not just for the NBA but also for the ABA. Um, we were part of the play-in tournament, but I definitely think uh, going on the run we had, if we could have gotten past the Phoenix, would have been a really nice matchup going into the championship weekend for the Central region. Again, we never played the Fury, so I don't know how that matchup would have went. But we had several close games between us and the Lions. I definitely think those would have been pretty close games, as well as the Kings. The Kings were without a few of their key players going into the playoffs, so I think those would have turned out a little bit differently. But that's something to keep in mind as well. Next year, the play-in tournament definitely can still host a team capable of going to the finals. But the other game that was in the Eastern Conference for the NBA play-ins was the Hawks and the Bulls. The Bulls were able to take down the Hawks pretty much. It was kind of similar to that Warriors Kings game where the Bulls kind of got out ahead and just held on to that lead for the whole game. But I know Trae Young was a little bit banged up going into that game. But I do want to call out Kobe White. He had 42 points in that game. That's very impressive. That young man for the Chicago Bulls, he's kind of really stepped up this season. Uh, Coming out of college from UNC, he was a pretty hot prospect. His scoring was right up there with the greatest player from UNC, Michael Jordan, as far as college stats go. And then he went to the Bulls. Obviously, there's some expectations with that. Um, but it was kind of cool to see how things lined up for that. I'm a Syracuse fan, but still cool to see something line up like that with UNC's leading scorer going to the Bulls. Um, but his first couple of years, he's kind of struggled to grow into that role. But this year, he really turned things around. I think he's going to be one of those players to watch for most improved player for the NBA awards. So, nice performance from him in that game. Tonight's game didn't go quite as well for the Bulls as well as Kobe White. But it's still a learning thing for all these teams as they go into the playoffs. And I think, well, that winds up being the seeding actually winds up falling for the East exactly how their record would have gone. So that actually winds up being the Sixers in the 7th seed and the Heat in the 8th seed. Over on the Western side, there's a chance for that to happen as well, with the Lakers taking the 7th seed, and then the Pelicans, if they wind up winning, they'll take the 8th seed, which again, that would have been what their record would have gotten them. If not, the Kings will sneak in. Record-wise, they would have been the 9th seed, but they'll actually take the 8th seed from the Pelicans. But that sets up the NBA playoffs. That'll run for quite some time. First round starts this weekend, and then I think the finals are normally sometime around June. So, a couple of months actually of NBA playoffs to watch. So even though the ABA will be going into full off-season mode, we'll still have some basketball to watch. College basketball again wrapped up past couple of weeks, with UConn men's wrapping up with the championship and South Carolina women's getting the championship in the March Madness tournaments. But yeah, so we'll have the ABA championship again. Throw that graphic up. ABA championship tomorrow night between the Fury and the winner of the Binghamton Bulls and Mississippi Silverbacks game, and that believe is still going on currently. But I'm sure they'll post something as far as who winds up winning that, and that'll set up a pretty fun game for tomorrow. Again, us on the Instigator side, I think we're going to be pulling for the Chicago Fury, just to keep that, or at least part of the championship, up in the Central region. But definitely a lot of things going on. We'll have AB there in the All-Star game tomorrow. I will be there in attendance as well. But a lot of things to recap next week, once we see all this stuff unfold in tomorrow. And we'll keep you updated as far as any kind of announcements we have, any updates for either amateur night or any kind of votes for the Instigators announcements coming up, as always. But I think that is all the stuff I had for tonight's episode of Instigate Success. Again, thank you everybody who joined us. Episode 40. Pretty crazy. I know I've said this a few times before, but pretty crazy to see that we're already up to that number. And we're still sticking around every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'll be here as your host. We'll try to have some guests on from time to time as well. But championship weekend here in Alabama. Again, I don't know why they chose like a Mardi Gras type of theme going on for that graphic. Little confusing, but driving through Alabama and here in Mobile, I think if I would have done it, they have some ships out there. I believe they're military ships, carrier ships or something. But I think that's what I would have thrown in there. So I know Frosty and I were debating last week, what do you put for Alabama? Neither one of us really had a clear idea, but driving through, I think that's what I would put now. But yeah, so recap on all this stuff next week on Instigate Success. But until then, as always, be great and instigate.